There have been so many incredible JRPGs over the years, but with the nature of the genre itself changing so drastically over the last decade or two, how many of them released since 2020 can still give us those warm fuzzy feelings years later? How many of them blew us away when we played them and left us in tears or in absolute awe? I have played and finished a lot of JRPGs since I started full-time content creation in 2020. I have a list of them right here, some of which aren't even Japanese, but still conjure that same image that someone gets when they hear the term JRPG. That, and it's a lot easier to have the title of the video be for JRPGs rather than JRPGs and the games that are inspired by them, you know? And I've been craving, chasing even, that same feeling I once got as a kid playing Final Fantasy IX or Dragon Warrior Monsters, Illusion of Gaia or Chrono Trigger. And I'll be real with you, there are games on this list that other people would consider blew them away but didn't do the same for me, as well as some I've not played. Now this includes the behemoth that is the Trails franchise, because I'm human and I can't play literally everything, but I wanted to take a look at the last 5 years and pick out some of the JRPGs that swept me off my feet. I'm going to be avoiding ports and remasters, so don't expect to see Final Fantasy Tactics or the Pixel remasters on here, even though I absolutely adored the Evil East Chronicles. And I'm only going to be covering remakes if I feel they are truly transformative experiences compared to their source material, which I suppose brings me to my first game. Final Fantasy VII Remake, released in 2020, generated a lot of shockwaves amongst Final Fantasy fans in numerous directions, but regardless of how you feel about the direction Final Fantasy VII has taken and whether you consider the game to even be a remake in the first place is a large point of discussion for many. And while the story didn't bowl me over, in fact I'm still pretty upset about it after having finished its second part, Rebirth, in 2024, but I'm willing to wait until part 3 at least before popping off about it, the game itself is a hallmark of what it can mean to bring the genre of action and turn-based JRPG together, in ways that subsequent Final Fantasy games, particularly Final Fantasy XVI, did not do, which is why it's the only Final Fantasy on this list. The imagery present in Final Fantasy VII Remake is still as poignant as it ever was, and fan favourite characters like Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith are beautifully portrayed in it. Though I detest what they've done so far with Sephiroth, that's getting a video all to itself if you want to know more. And characters like Jessie, who perhaps didn't get as much screen time the first time around, were much more prominent in Remake, and cutscenes, while plentiful, never outstayed their welcome. The experience was more linear in a lot of ways, but it was done in such a way that didn't matter. It was concise, focused, and elevated a lot of what made the original so beloved, at least when it stuck to the script, so to speak. There was intrigue in the changes being made, certainly with the ending, and I was keen to see where it would go, even if ultimately I didn't love the direction it took. It's for these reasons that Rebirth is not on this list, even though I think it would be for a lot of people. It's a matter of taste, I find. Some prefer the open areas presented in that game and the larger scope, whereas I prefer a more tightly focused experience. And Rebirth just made me feel by the end of it that I wish they had stuck to the original script rather than being intrigued as to where they were going to go. Again, I'm willing to see where Part 3 lands us, and Rebirth did refine even further the game mechanics that Remake put in place, but it just didn't sweep me off my feet like the first one did. But let's move on to the next game that did. Atlus JRPGs are some of the most beloved across the entire genre, and with very good reason. Their iconography, standout UIs, and slice-of-life storytelling go a long way with players all over the world, and so I imagine that you would expect me to put either Persona 5 Royal, which was released in 2020, or Metaphor ReFantazio on this list. I have a slight confession to make though. Aside from Persona 4, despite having the platinum trophies for the majority of Atlus's JRPGs that are available on PlayStation, I don't actually like Persona all that much due to the high school anime setting, which does very little for me, and Metaphor, while I loved it at the start due to the political intrigue and clear messaging, I found kinda sagged as the game went on and the story devolved into anime tropes that don't really work for me. I also don't really like the calendar system in either game either, but this is all a me thing. I absolutely think that both of these games belong on a lot of people's lists, and I 100% respect them from an objective standpoint for being as strong as they are. But they're not the JRPG that Atlus makes that excites me the most. That would be the core Shin Megami Tensei franchise, and SMT5, released in 2021, well, more specifically 2024's SMT5 Vengeance, because it's better in pretty much every way, did for me what its spin-offs couldn't, which is present a gameplay-focused JRPG that challenges me and forces me to engage with its deep mechanics, showing outlandish designs that the SMT franchise is known for with a gorgeously ethereal protagonist. The main thing I really like about Shin Megami Tensei 5 in particular is that the story is not the strongest part of the game. It's fine, even though it still presents high school characters in an anime setting, which I don't love. It's certainly not a bad story, but it also doesn't punish me for not reading between the lines for every word uttered, nor does it force me to sit through social links that frankly, I don't really care about. I don't need to know what my party ate for breakfast that morning or how good at darts they are. That's not a read on Persona or metaphor objectively. They're as beloved as they are for a reason, but Shin Megami Tensei 5 caught me off guard because it reminded me that there are still JRPGs out there with beautiful design philosophies and references left, right, and center to the real world that are rooted in gameplay first, which are the kinds of JRPGs that I've always loved, because I'll confess, I was a bit of a cutscene skipper when I was little, and to have games that make that okay for me, I'm genuinely really happy about it. I've also played a lot of Monster Tamer RPGs these past few years, including Dragon Quest Monsters 3 and my first forays into the Pokemon and Digimon franchises, and while they're fun, they don't stick out to me in the same way SMT5 did. There's just something about the nuance and the challenge that just speaks to me. Speaking of Sega, who publishes Shin Megami Tensei and the rest of Atlus's releases post-2020, they've been absolutely knocking it out of the park with JRPGs since the turn of the decade, as there's another franchise that I started with in 2020 that I've not been able to put down since. Yakuza Like a Dragon took me by complete surprise when I played it in 2022. Well, yeah, that's 2 years after it had been released. I said it was 2020, it's actually 2022, thanks to PlayStation Plus and a bunch of people's recommendations. And I wasn't sure about it at first, I'd never really been interested in the Yakuza franchise up until that point, but hey, it was free, so I figured why not give it a go? Oh my god, I did not realize what I had been missing out on. I want to go on record here and say that since playing Like a Dragon, I've now played every Yakuza game, Ishin, Gaiden, Pirate in Hawaii, the first 6 games, I now can't wait for Kiwami 3, Infinite Wealth, all of them, just because of how much this game has impacted me. I was not expecting Ichiban Kasuga to become a literal favourite character ever for me, and my main in Sonic Racing Crossworlds now, thank you very much, due to just how ridiculously adorable he is. Especially when you consider the juxtaposition of his personality against what should typically be seen as the hyper-masculine, almost toxically masculine role of a Yakuza frontman. If there's one thing I've grown to realise I like in a JRPG, it's tonal whiplash, when a game is light-hearted for a long time and then suddenly drops the feels on you. Whereas in something like Persona, it feels trite because it's taking its light-hearted side almost too seriously, it's basically impossible to take something like Dragon Kart or Super Crazy Delivery seriously in any way. Minigames that are largely very fun, by the way, unlike in some games, I'm looking at you, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and yet LAD7 gets you in the feels more than once. It feels weird to say this, but it's almost like the way Disney does it with its movies, just with loads of violent criminals and weirdly homoerotic levels of shirtless men. That's not even touching on the gameplay either. The swap to turn-based for Like a Dragon was a big swing and a risk considering how much of a cult following the previous Yakuza games had. And I like to think it really paid off, and considering that subsequent games have gone in both directions since then, it's given the RGG team a lot to play with in the future as well, so I genuinely can't fault this one. It got me into an entire franchise I love now, and I adored it. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is also an amazing game, but neither the story nor the gameplay quite hit me in the same way as LAD7 did, through no fault of Kiryu Kazuma's inclusion, because come on, we all love Kiryu, but stuff like the Dondoko Island side quest just dragged for me. I felt that Infinite Wealth started a lot slower than LAD7 did, and I felt the villains were considerably weaker than Ryo Aoki was in LAD7, so I have to give Kasuga's maiden voyage the shout out here. The HD 2D style of game started before 2020 with the first Octopath Traveler in 2018, but it certainly came into its own after the turn of the decade, with numerous releases including Live Alive, Triangle Strategy, which unfortunately I hated due to incessant cutscening. If there's one thing I hate in modern JRPGs, it's too much cutscene, not enough game. And the Erdrick Trilogy remakes for Dragon Quest, all of which are fabulous. I debated putting Dragon Quest III HD 2D on this list because it is pretty transformative to the DQ3 experience, but I feel like I went into that experience already knowing I was going to enjoy it, being a fan of the franchise, so I wouldn't say it rocked my world in quite the way I'm going for in this video. Octopath Traveler 2, however, came at me from nowhere, and it knocked my socks off. I'd played Octopath Traveler 1 and I really liked it. In fact, I played it again when it re-released on PlayStation, and it genuinely revived some of my love for the JRPG genre after I'd gotten a little bit disillusioned with it, a subject I can talk about in another video if you like. I even made a video about it ages ago, but Octopath Traveler 2 just takes that formula and improves upon it in basically every single way. The characters are more interesting almost across the board, there's more tactics than the first game, the stories tie in together more nicely, the challenge is higher than before. Seriously, screw the second coming of Gold Era all the way into the sunset. It just encapsulates all the best aspects of old school JRPGs, but with all of the quality of life aspects that we've come to expect since the likes of Bravely Default. It was after playing Octopath Traveler 2 that I started to wonder what other franchises would work well with the HD 2D style, and honestly there are some that I genuinely think would benefit from going in this direction, and I persistently look forward to new releases from Team Asano, like Elliot the Adventurer and Octopath Traveler 0, because they're in HD 2D. So to say that Octopath Traveler 2 impacted me strongly, I'd say is a fair cop. In a similar vein to Octopath Traveler, reminding me of a time long past but with a modern set of eyes, are all of the Japanese-inspired, old-school styled RPGs that have come out of indie developers over the past few years. And there's been a lot of really good ones that I can't not mention here. Games like Chained Echoes, Cosmic Star Heroine, that one might have been pre-2020 actually, I think it might be anyway. Ast Libra Revision, Crystal Project, all of them are really strong entries, but one of them really just took me out and swept the rug out from under me. I loved Sea of Stars. I could not put this game down from start to finish. Not only did it remind me of games like Super Mario RPG, Legend of Dragoon, and its obvious nods to Chrono Trigger, thanks to being more interactive than most JRPG style games, but was also evocative of games like Golden Sun that put puzzle gameplay and almost Zelda-like dungeon exploration front and center, and I couldn't help but adore it. Now, I know that in some circles of the internet that Sea of Stars is not popular, because the story is more pedestrian, I suppose, than a lot of other games in the genre, but if my list has shown you anything, it's that while I love a good story, good gameplay and presentation is at the forefront of my mind whenever I play any game. And Sea of Stars does all of that correctly, and in defense of the story, I did well up a little bit at a particular point in the story, even if I thought the ending was a little bit contrived. The music is outstanding, the art style is delicious, the DLC was really strong, the puzzles and the combat are both brilliant. I loved this game and I can't wait to see what Sabotage does next, because for what it's worth, I really love The Messenger as well. Now, I cannot end this video without one more mention of a JRPG that's not Japanese made, a JRPG if you will. Of course, I'm talking about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. This game single-handedly revived my passion for the turn-based RPG genre. I was privileged enough to attend the launch party for this game before its release, and even then, walking into that room, you just knew there was something special about this game. And when I got this game to review, baby, the time I spent glued to my PlayStation Portal making sure nobody knew what I was doing, saying to myself how insufferable I was gonna be when this game came out, I can't tell you how much I loved this game. Real talk, I love all of the games I've talked about in this video, but the only one that truly breaks my top 10 of all time is Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and let me tell you why. You know how a lot of modern games spend the first few hours easing you in with a ton of exposition and explanation about who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, etc, etc. Well, straight up, I hate that. When there's too much setup, you lose me. All of the best games back in the day, Final Fantasy X, BioShock, Resident Evil 2, Doom 2016 even, you start the game up and that's it, you're in, you're invested. Now I know that some games like to have a slow burn and that's totally valid, but that's not me. The thing that makes Expedition 33 stick out so much is how it's got such an extensive world building aspect, so much detail, references to the real world. But you're emotionally invested in this game within 10 minutes of loading it up. And if you weren't, it was pretty clear that this game just wasn't going to be for you. To be honest, this is where I felt Final Fantasy XVI went wrong. That game is one of the strongest openings I have ever seen in a video game. And then it went completely in the opposite direction, and I'm still pretty upset about it. It's definitely not a bad game, and perhaps you'd put Final Fantasy XVI on this list. But I wanted Final Fantasy Tactics style political intrigue, which was delivered in the first couple of hours, and instead we got served, well, Ultima. Despite its mature themes and aesthetics, E33 managed to weave in humour and fun at the same time, but does so using music and gameplay mechanics to get there. The gameplay was brilliant, just like Sea of Stars. It required not only planning and character building, but moment-to-moment gameplay as well, and it was challenging, which I loved. The party characters are unique but customizable. You could break the game in a plethora of ways, and it felt like you were allowed to as well. The motifs of the painters and the art world spoke to me personally as well. It's a weird combination stars align kind of moment because I'm able to speak French and I know painterly techniques and terminology due to being an art student. So I cottoned on to the themes of the game pretty quickly due to the music's lyrics and the visual clues, like looking at what the gesturals actually are. But that didn't detract from the experience for me, it added to it. It made me feel like this game was specifically targeted at me. It's been well over half a year since I finished Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and I still think about it all the time. I still play its music when I'm working, I still do drawings of the characters. No other JRPG or game styled like a JRPG has caught me in its clutches since Final Fantasy IX like this one did. If they never released another Clair Obscur game, I'd be fine with it. Expedition 33 was an absolute masterpiece as far as I'm concerned, so if it stopped there, I'd be okay with it. But if they did want to do more with it, I'd happily eat it up. There are a ton of JRPGs and JRPG-styled games that have come out since 2020, but those are the ones that really swept me off my feet, and I'd love to hear from you about which ones really caught you by surprise and the games you feel you'll be talking about for years to come. And if there are any that I haven't played that you think I should, for example, I really need to get into Xenoblade Chronicles 3, please do let me know in the comments, because I'd love to hear from you. Just be aware that as I've gotten older, I've come to realize that the more anime tropey a game is, the less likely I am to enjoy it. Not anime looks necessarily, I don't mind that. Some of my favorite games have had that aesthetic, but if it ends up being teenager versus God by the end of it, I'm less interested in that. And if you want to hear about the games that pulled me out of the JRPG genre for a long time before some of these came along like smelling salts to wake me the heck up, then let me know in the comments about that too. And if you like what you see here, then drop a subscribe if you're feeling nice. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.